with talking about the no spots, and then we will end with just a quick thought on soccer and basketball. But I think the guys kind of said it all with the Wizards. But I do want to get your take as well on the win streak and on the nil-nil result, as they say in soccer. And thank you again, Katie, for joining us. I really appreciate it. But yeah, Champ, let people know maybe the three biggest storylines that are happening in wrestling right now.
Well, right now in wrestling, this literally came out about a couple hours even before this podcast went to air. Is that the former Rusev and the former Lana of WWE, now known as Miro and CJ Perry of AEW, are getting close to divorce court. They have been separated. CJ Perry actually put out a statement via TMZ announcing the separation. There was no reasoning behind the separation, but apparently, according to at least one person that I know, there's no surprise that they have been separated. But to a lot of people, it's a big surprise that they are separating. There's no word on what's going on, but hopefully, over the coming weeks, we'll find out what's going on with the separation. The other big news story is that the Hall of Fame for WWE, which is going to get ready for their 2024 class induction coming up on the Friday before WrestleMania 40. They've already announced Paul Heyman, Bull Nakano, and the U.S. Express, which is Mike Rotunda and Barry Windham. They've already announced their fourth inductee into the 2024 class, which will be a posthumous induction of the legendary boxer Muhammad Ali, who had some involvement in wrestling. He was in a exhibition match in Japan with the late Antonio Inoki, and he was a part of the very first WrestleMania back in the early 80s. He was one of the special guest referees for the tag match that involved Hulk Hogan and Mr. T against Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff. So he will get an induction into the Hall of Fame this year. And the other big story in wrestling right now is the fact that once again, toxic and disgusting wrestling, and this is air quote, fans have shown their ugly side when the covers were released for the newly released WWE 2K24 video game. One of those covers is just Cody Rhodes himself, while the other cover features current WWE Women's World Champion Rhea Ripley and former SmackDown and Raw Women's Champion Bianca Belair. That cover received a lot of racist, disgusting remarks from individuals on social media, which led to an outcry from not only a lot of the women wrestlers on WWE, but just women professional wrestlers across the lexicon. Cody Rhodes even chimed in, and a hashtag of "We Love Bianca" trended on Twitter for the entire day after all of this happened. If you listen to the most recent podcast we put out, which was 235, my final thoughts gave my unfiltered and clearly biased opinion about how I felt about Bianca Belair being attacked the way that she was when the cover of her came out. So if you want to hear my thoughts about that, you can check out the recent podcasts and things of that nature. So those are the three big news stories going on right now in wrestling. Outside of that, TNA had their second premium live event in the post Scott D'Amore era, which was Sacrifice, which was a really good event. We reviewed that on the last podcast as well. And also, right now, New Japan Pro Wrestling is in the midst of its own version of March Madness, which is the New Japan Cup tournament. The first round is already complete. This past Monday, the first of six second round matches took place to determine who's going on to the quarterfinals of that tournament. There are going to be two more nights with the second round. And then when we come back on Thursday, we will recap all of that action and get you ready for the final second round matches. And then all the rounds after that, with the finals taking place on March the 20th to determine who will be next to challenge Tetsuya Naito for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, as Sakura Genesis will take shape Also, when it comes to New Japan Pro Wrestling, it was announced that with their return to Taiwan in April for the first time in 8 years, Stardom, who's been going through some things with the loss of their co-founder, they are going to have a match on that card coming up in April. So that's going to be a big deal as well. And also, when it comes to New Japan Pro Wrestling, Julia, who was the longest reigning New Japan Strong Women's Champion, just lost her championship on the second night of Stardom's Cinderella tournament to Stephanie Vaquer, who is one of the top stars in CMLL, which is the oldest promotion in all of professional wrestling and one of the top promotions in Mexico. That adds to her belt total, as she is currently the CMLL World Women's Champion and the CMLL World Women's Tag Team Champion. So a lot going on with wrestling. And if you want to learn more about what's going on with wrestling, make sure you check us out on twitch.tv/true no spots pod. This Thursday, again, we will be talking more about the New Japan Cup and all the news surrounding New Japan and everything like that. Then this coming Sunday, we will have the weekly wrestling podcast with myself and my tag team partner, the Sith, where we will be talking more about the fallout, the continued build to WrestleMania, plus more continued build towards Dynasty for AEW and continue fallout from Revolution, which just happened just over a week ago, which saw Sting have his last professional wrestling match and everything like that. We're gonna have a lot to cover, plus whatever news that occurs within the week. So again, twitch.tv/True No Spots Pod. We stream all our podcasts live on there. The audio goes up on Spotify and Amazon Music. You can check out sportsothp.com, click the podcast partners button and check out not only any episodes we put out in the future, but also any past episodes we put out as well. So if you're a wrestling fan and want to hear about thoughts and opinions and feelings from other wrestling fans, you want to check out our podcast, because myself and Sith are longtime wrestling fans. Sith was a wrestling fan back when it was all about the territories. I'm a wrestling fan when it was just WCW and WWF and everything like that. But it's always fun to be able to chat and talk to and interact with other wrestling fans. So if you are a wrestling fan and want to interact with us, we all not only stream our podcast recordings, but we also do live reactions to pay-per-views. We do live reactions to all WWE pay-per-views, all AEW pay-per-views, and all the TNA major pay-per-views, not their TNA Plus events, but just their major pay-per-views. So if you want to come in and you're watching one of the pay-per-views and want to sit and watch with us, like we are sitting with us and things of that nature, definitely come in and check that out. But that's what we do at twitch.tv/True No Spots Pod.
Yep. So I love just going in. I don't actually get to watch a lot of the matches live and stuff, but it's great just to have on in the background and to listen to their immediate reactions. And then I sometimes will catch clips later on social media. And so they're a great listen. And so I love it because if I'm not buying the pay-per-view, I can still get an idea of what's going on. And so yeah, I appreciate Champ for bringing all that to the forefront. Real quickly, before we end, I do want to talk a couple of things. So let's talk about the MLS real fast. There was not a lot of scoring in this.
That's an understatement. There was not a lot of scoring. There was no
There
scoring.
was no scoring in a 0-0 result. So there's not a whole lot of highlights to talk about in this. But you know, they were able to get a point by having it be a draw. But unfortunately, that makes them fall in the standings. I'm getting the current table results. So they fell all the way to sixth place, right next to FC Cincinnati. They're right above them because they did have one extra goal. There are more in the goal differential side of things. But Inter Miami, who's been really solid this year, is in first. Montreal's in second. Columbus Crew's in third. Red Bulls are in tied with them in third, and then Toronto FC is in fifth. They all have 7 points, so we're only 2 points behind all of them. So a win gets us to eight because you get 3 points in soccer. But big matchup coming up against Miami on March 16th. So just in a couple of days here. And on Saturday, it'll be a 2 o'clock game in Washington. Hopefully, people show up for that. It should be a beautiful day, I believe, on Saturday. And yeah, show up big for DC United because this is a game where if we get 3 points over the quote unquote best team in the East right now, we could pole vault them in the standings. So, but Champ, any thoughts on this game?
I mean, there's not much to say about this game because there was no scoring. It was a lot of defense. Not it was not quite a few shots on goal, but not a lot that were on target. So it was definitely a defensive battle that played all the way through. But it's still early in the season. This is only the third game of the season, so it's a very long season for MLS. But so far, DC United has shown that they are a much different team than they were last season. When we started talking about them late last season, they were fighting to try to get into the playoffs and they just couldn't make it. Right now, they're starting off on a much better foot. They have yet to lose a game, yet they've only won one game and have had two draws. So they've managed to scrounge up 5 points early on. So they're going to really need to like start to not to really step it up because again, it's early, it's a long season, but they had an opportunity here to really get 3 points because we talked about this last week. FC Cincinnati had players that were part of an international tournament that was a couple of days prior to this game. So one of the things that I mentioned was the fatigue factor of Cincinnati, given the fact that some of their players were involved in the game literally a couple of days prior to this, and yet they could not take advantage of that. Granted that it was a road game for United, they had to go to Cincinnati, but they needed to take advantage of this to be able to get 3 points out of this, dealing with a team that had players that were already playing in a game literally a couple days prior to this. But unfortunately, they could not take advantage of that, and they ended up with a nil-nil tie and only 1 point. So that's going to be a very I feel it in my gut that this game, as early as it is going to be a pivotal game down the stretch when they're trying to get as up in the table to get into a playoff spot later on in the season. I feel like this game is going to be very, very critical because of the fact that it was a tie, but there were no goals scored. So they're really going to have to really step it up moving forward if they're going to even have a remote chance of being in the conversation of making it into the playoffs and once again establishing themselves as one of the best teams in the MLS. Remember, they won 4 MLS Cups early on when MLS was still trying to be a thing and things like that. They were the first dynasty of MLS. So now it's time for them to like get back to that point, but it's going to have to start with them having more of an offensive output. Even if they tie but at least score a goal, they can at least give themselves a chance. But having these nil-nil ties is not going to be enough when it comes down to stretch, especially when it comes to tiebreakers, including goal differential and things of that nature. So if they're going to have close games like this, they need to at least get on the board, get the ball in the net in order to give themselves a chance.
Yes, it's going back to what Cincinnati had to do. They had to play a Monterrey team from Mexico, and in that CONCACAF game, and they ended up losing that game at home 1-0. So I think that they kind of were playing almost to salvage a tie in this, because they didn't want to lose both of them, at home. That's a rough week. So then they now have to go to Mexico to play their next game. So it's gonna be tough because it's an aggregate of the two games, in goals to see if they will continue on, I believe, and how that's set up. So I'll be interested to see how they do going forward. And I'm interested to see how we do against Miami going forward. So let's also just quickly change gears. I do want to get your quick thoughts on the Wizards having a win streak. I know I got the guys' thoughts during the audio podcast, but what were some of your thoughts on these two wins?
Just looking at it, it was the Kyle Kuzma show. Against Charlotte, he scored 28 points, which was a really big with the win over Charlotte. And then going up against the Miami team who sits at 8. Like if the playoffs started today, they would be somewhat in. when it comes to the playoffs, but we were able to outlast them with Kyle Kuzma scoring 32 in that one. Now, Bam Adebayo had a double double in that game, but it wasn't enough for them to be able to beat the Wizards. And so now with the Wizards, they need to build off of this. They only have 11 wins on the season. The season's pretty much done. They're not making the playoffs. There's no way. Like, even if they win every game going forward after this, they're not making the playoffs. They're basically playing for pride at this point. And a lot of times, pride is all you need to like fight when it comes to competition. And so they need to build off of this and be able to at least salvage something out of the season, even if it means sacrificing having a high draft pick coming up in the upcoming draft. They need to do something with this, honestly, because they have really just fallen down and have had lack of fight. I mean, Wes Unseld Jr. got fired already, and they still showed no passion, no explosivity, no fight, even after he got let go. And it's like you want to show something of some fire and some passion for whoever comes in as the actual head coach of this team once this season ends. So you don't want to bring in someone that's going to deal with a team that just has lack of fight, lack of passion, and lack of wanting to actually win a championship. Washington, this Wizards team is the one team in the DC area that hasn't won a championship recently. Their last championship was even before I was an itch in my daddy's pants,
Yeah.
1979. Okay, I was born in 82. Okay, even the Commanders are more recent when it comes to winning a championship outside of the Capitals and the Nationals. Okay, they won a championship when I was 9 years old back in 1993.
Yep.
So the Wizards really, 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 really need to turn this around and at least salvage this season. If they get a really high draft pick, take advantage of having a high draft pick, get a really good player that can really be plugged in there and really push forward. But it's good that they were able to end that 16 game losing streak. Don't get the record for having the longest losing streak in NBA history. We don't need that on our conscience. End that up and start something good. Start something good, start something positive, and maybe you don't completely lose the fan base, because right now I'm pretty sure the fan base is like really not really there. I know that Tim in a room, they didn't mention it earlier on during the audio podcast, but they were at a game, and one of them were at a game and said that even the fans didn't leave even though they knew the game was lost. But they still stayed there. So you still have a lot of loyal fans that are still clinging on to this team, but you got to give them something to cling on to. Because right now, like, I can't call myself a loyal fan. I haven't watched a Wizards game in months. I'm going
Yeah.
to be completely honest. I have not watched a Wizards game in months because there's nothing really to watch, because it's nothing but disappointment. But if they start showing me some more fight, start showing me some more passion, and start showing me that they want to be competitive, even though they know that the playoffs are not even in the cards, I will start watching games again. Even if we don't talk about them on the podcast, I will go back and start watching games again just to see the passion, the heart, the fight in this team. And then hopefully when this season's over and we go into the 2024-2025 season, they absolutely come out and start firing on all cylinders, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. I just hopefully this will spark. I mean, and they've had some fight over the last couple of weeks too. I mean, they fought the Lakers in a close game that the Lakers ended up, winning in overtime. So there's been glimmers. And you just want to watch progression. You would talk about the Capitals earlier and about how we're excited about young prospects in the future, right? Like even that would be exciting for us. Like we don't even know how the team is going to be made up in the future here. And so that's difficult as a fan to really like get behind and be excited. I know people that are like reporters on the team that are barely watching, and I know that we cover the team, but not to that extent. But like, Yeah, so hopefully there'll be some exciting news coming forward. We are going to be doing a cool basketball special next week as part of our 8-year anniversary. We're going to start the show with our hockey talk. There'll be a live game against the Flames. Hoping CP3 might even make an appearance for some of that. We will then, in the second segment, maybe if there's more breaking news from free agency, talk about that a little bit. If the Wizards end up winning some of these games this week, maybe we'll talk about them, or DC United if they're able to do a good game against Miami. So we'll have a little bit of a variety, half an hour, from
And
10
Ravi, really quickly, a couple breaking news stories happened during your interview with Katie earlier on. Uh, McManus, the former kicker for the Denver Broncos, who was with the Jags, has signed with the Commanders. 1 year, $3.6 million. And we have just signed a two-time Super Bowl champion offensive lineman, Nick Allegretti, who's a guard from the Chiefs,
Oh wow.
for 3 years, 16 million, 9 million guaranteed.
Wow.
So
That's
the
great.
Commanders are still making moves at this point.
Nice. I like it. So hopefully we'll have more news to talk about that. We'll just kind of keep the DMV sports talk to a little bit shorter next week. We'll probably do it for like 30 minutes, and then we'll switch into maybe we'll do like the biggest wrestling story next week, and then we'll switch into March Madness gear. And we've got Ryan's been in chat, that E flat guy. He'll be a part of the conversation. I think I'll have Arun back, and also Davey is eating a sandwich. We're also going to have on. And that's going to be my segue because that's going to be our raid target today. Davey's doing a pop up music stream. I know a lot of friends of Katie's who might be lurking might be interested in joining that. So um, I am going to say that everyone should go check out Champ and the No Spots podcast. And yeah, it's definitely a great time over there. It's been fun to do this with you for the last at least 5 seasons, maybe 6 seasons that we've done it together on this show. And yeah, it'll be a fun celebration next week to celebrate 8 years. So I'm excited to have a lot of guests from all different time periods. Come in and do that.
It's crazy y'all are going into season 9. My son was 2 when y'all had
Wow.
y'all's first episode, and my son was 2. He's now 10. So it's
Wow.
crazy to think that how long y'all have been going on talking about DC sports without the politics. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And big congratulations to you guys. Like, and we talked about this last week, Robbie, that come WrestleMania weekend, No Spots will be finishing up season 5, and after a week off, we'll be going into our 6th season. So it's hard to believe that the vision of Jason Terrell, the late Black GOP, has brought us to where we are now, where you are going into your 9th season of this podcast, and I'm about to go into my 6th season. It's absolutely insane. And I miss that dude every day, but I'm so glad that we're able to continue to push his vision of podcasting and providing podcasts in an pretty much unbiased way with what we do. And if he was still here, I'm pretty sure he would just be over the moon with what we've done over this time period.
Yeah, I miss him a lot too. I think, the fact that he gave us an opportunity, and originally I was just going to be a producer, and Carol was going to be the host of the show, and we had Hurt come on and said, no, I'll field the phone calls. People who might be listening to this might not know. We started this as a web streaming radio show, and he would field calls for us and then patch them in, and we would talk to different guests from all over the country on that. And we would then, a couple of weeks in, I decided, some people, I want to have an opportunity for people to call in and give longer form conversations about their favorite sports teams, because the sports radio in this area, you get your 1 minute statement, and they hang up on you, and then they talk about whatever you said, good or bad, right? and there just wasn't an
Yeah.
opportunity to have a dialogue back and forth with many, people. And I understand with radio, your time is limited and it's not the right format for it. But podcasts were really a couple of people sitting in a room doing a podcast together, just two or three people. It wasn't inviting an audience into it. So I wanted to kind of find a way, how do we hybrid a radio show and a podcast together? And then I realized that not everybody wants their voice on it, right? But they might have a question or a comment. And so that's why we went on Facebook Live, and we found a big audience there. People were really into that for a while. And then, I brought it to Twitch at one point. It didn't really take off. But then I made a lot of amazing friends through the Twitch music community, and they encouraged me to bring it back. And then 3 years ago, we brought it back, and we'll celebrate 3 years affiliate in May. But it's just been a really cool ride to be able to actually make it so there's monetary possibility to continue to run the show. And as much as I appreciate Facebook for giving us the opportunity and the web streaming platform for doing that, but it was really Jason's vision. We spent a lot of time talking about, how can we add video? How can parlay this and do different things? And, we got to do all these different variety programming with him. And it was a really cool thing to talk about movies and culture and all that we did back then. And I would have been sad if that whole vision got lost with him. And so I'm happy that we've kind of taken the torch of the True Radio Network, and between our two programs have been able to keep it alive through this network. And I'm sure that he's looking down somewhere and is proud of what we've been able to accomplish. And hopefully someday, I know Hurt's been busy. Hopefully he'll come back to doing this as well. I know that he has such a passion for this stuff, and I know he loves it when he is able to come on the show. And people go through ebbs and flows. I know that Carol wishes that he could be a part of the show more than he's able to right now. But his time will come. I appreciate all the time he was able to afford me during my paternity leaves. I took two big leaves, took some summers off, and he got the ball rolling through all that. And so I'm super thankful for all those opportunities that he has afforded me in my life. And you talked about how amazing it is to watch our kids grow up. My kid's now 2 and 5, right? And neither were born when we started this show. So
Right.
that's wild to me.
And I'm honestly like sitting here thinking, like, really, really thinking that if Carol doesn't have the time to do the podcast over the summer for the Nationals, that I will really pick up and start watching Nats games, and I'll pick that ball up and start running with it,
Yeah.
just to keep sports on the hill on people's minds before the Commanders return, before the uh before the Caps return, before the Wizards return, and things of that nature. Because you and Carol, you guys built such an awesome platform of being able to talk about DC sports, one of the most not really talked about sports play platforms in all the professional sports. Everybody talks about New York, everybody talks about Los Angeles, everybody talks about Miami and things of that nature, Kansas City, New York, but there's hardly anybody talking about DC sports unless it's negative because of the negative press that we get. So it's good that we have a platform like Sports on the Hill to talk about DC sports without the politics. So if it means that I would need to make time to start watching Nationals games in order to keep this going in the summer, when you take your hiatus and Carroll's unable to do it because of his burgeoning career, I will take that mantle. I will take the mantle and start and keep this thing going. I will do that
Let's.
because
I
there's no
appreciate it, but let's see how the Nationals are doing. Because if the Nationals
right. No,
here,
true.
I don't know if you. I very much. My heart is very full with you giving this offer, but you can, with how the Nationals did last year, I wouldn't want to make you go through that. So, like, so I think it's a two-way street. Well, son of, what's great about this season, we're going to start the spring season here when we start season 9. We'll be able to monitor the Nationals a little bit and see how they do going into the summer. And if they're having a good season, then there's a conversation to be had about that. If they're not, then we can do little one-off pop-ups or something to try to keep updated. But that means a lot to me that you would step in and want to do that. And I thank you so much for being a co-host of the show this whole last season. And you and Dugenais, keeping the football segments alive. And, I really appreciate both of you guys, your input and all of that. But
Shout out to the Not Bland show.
yes, exactly. I'll do a DJ shout out for anyone that doesn't follow him there. Not Bland 21 on Twitch as well. So that's a great show in addition. And yeah, we'll have a fun show next week. We'll remiss even more then. But Champ, thank you so much for being a part of tonight's show. I think this is the time to raid. If you are a sub, you can use the sub raid. If you are not, you can use that raid command. I am going to have us go over to this fine gentleman who's going to be on the show next week. And yeah, so we're going to right over to him right now. But thank you everyone for tuning in and being a part of this. We had so many viewers all night long. I really do appreciate all the lurkers and the viewers and everyone for being a part of it. Let's go say hi to Davey. He is a really great streamer. He's doing music tonight, I believe. And yeah, let's give him some love and look forward to having him on the show. Next week he'll be on about 10:30 till about now, midnight. We'll talk a little bit of March Madness, which I know is a big thing of his. But Champ,